Find the right things here. There she is. Okay. First order of business is the approval of the November 3rd, 23 minutes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. New business. Meeting dates. Michelle and I talked, we have to meet quarterly. There's no perfect dates for anybody, okay? So we just have to pick the dates out and hopefully that we get quorums every time. If not, we'll scooch things around a week or so. But so if you'll notice the bottom of the agenda are the many meeting dates for 24. She had the audacity to ask me if I was going to be on vacation. I said all of them, but that's okay.
And I will send out a meeting invite for everyone to throw it on your calendars for next year for these dates. We have June 21st, September 13th, and December 6th. And we have kind of a tentative agenda for each one of those. On February 9th, we'll review the 2023 financials, so we'll have the wrap-up for 2023. We will also have the capital plan for 2024 at that meeting. In June, we hope to have the exit conference of the auditors, moving that along. So we're hoping June 21st, we're done, and they're out the door, and we can have an exit conference with them. The meeting in September, we're looking to have Mike Cecina come in from Cecina Associates to review debt and just give an overview at that meeting of where we stand. And December 6th meeting, of course, we'll be doing the 2025 budget and looking at things for how 2024 ended. So those are the reasons, but like Al said, we can amend as needed as we go through the year.
Again, you pick the dates and you hope they work. Benefits Committee Administrative Wage Recommendation. And you guys have given me tongue twisters this morning. It's Friday.
Yes, so this will be the annual Benefits Committee Administrative Wage Recommendation. So the process is we have a Benefits Committee that meets, and then we bring it to the Finance Committee for your approval, and then it will also go to the Commission for final approval on what the administrative employees will receive for wage increases in 2024. So the way this is typically run is that our AFSCME employees and administrative employees are treated the same. So the AFSCME employees for 2024 will receive a 2% wage increase. So that was what the Benefits Committee has proposed for the administrative employees for 2024. So the cost of doing that, I did put a paper there at everyone's chair. It has the breakdown of all the administrative employees that we have for the year, and then the total cost is $64,000 for next year to give all the administrative employees a wage increase for next year.
Fortunately, the city is in a position now. A few years ago, I would have, my ulcer would have kicked up again, but things are going up. I mean, we've all go to the grocery store and here and there, and I think that's a reasonable increase. Do you want a recommendation from the Finance Committee to the City Commission that we approve this?
I'll move that we recommend to the City Commission approval
Moved
of
and
the
seconded.
administrative wages.
Discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So I'm sure, Mr. Hack, if we didn't do that, you'd hear a lot of it.
Yeah, why don't we put on the record that the people in administration have abstained from that vote, those of us who
Yes.
vote on that?
And I assume you're not on here because you just got hired? Is that right?
I didn't know if you were a voting member or not, so.
The law director is not a voting member.
He is?
He is not a voting member, correct. He is here just
So
to
there's nobody
moral support.
on the,
Oh, so John's not voting?
John is a voting member, and Myself, I'm a voting member.
Right. Those are
And
the
we're
two that are
We'll,
abstaining.
we'll let the minutes show that the as our law director said, show that they did not vote.
Michelle, my question. Law director's not on here.
Correct, he's not on the committee. for the
No, I
finance.
meant on the pay sheet.
He was hired after we,
That's what I thought, yeah. That's what I was assuming.
There's just the two of you. Right.
The probationary employees don't get an
Right.
annual increase. They are
They're-
on probation for a year, and then there's a fixed cost increase when they hit their year. So that's why he's not on that.
But that's not a general. So we've got a recommendation, and we have voted and shown that the administrative people have abstained. Okay, so we'll send that to the city commission, and Mr. Brady, you can handle that on Monday, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
That raise does not
Sure.
include commission.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yes.
That's good, I can see it.
Okay. And by the way, again, welcome to our new law director, and I can't remember, I chair two different committees, so I can't remember which is the first one that I saw you at, but welcome to the city of Sandusky.
Thank you, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Yes. Next thing is the November financials. It took forever, my iPad, to figure out. I was looking for PDF down below, and then I hit that little blue button. Doggone it, they came up.
all right, so we'll review the November 2023 financials. We'll start out here with the revenue. Blue line is going to depict the income tax revenue. Income taxes really just slightly above where we were in 2022. We're at $13.1 million. Again, it's withholding dollars that we've seen the increase. The gray bar here is your admissions tax. So as we all know, we implemented the 8% admissions tax began in 2022. We're realizing the full effects of that 8% change in 2023, because as we all know, as Cedar Point sells their passes, there is, if they were sold in 2021, even though they were 2022 passes, it was still at the old rate of 4%. So we'll see differences there between 22 and 2023, but at the end of November, we are at $9.7 million in admissions tax for the year. The orange line down there is our lodging tax. So we fluctuated, obviously, during COVID when a lot of the hotels were shut down. Currently, we're just over $2 million in lodging tax for the year. Here's the total revenue. Total revenue for the year, right now, we're sitting at just over $33 million. That is an increase of where we were at this time last year. One of the big notable differences is that we've seen almost $1 million increase in interest earnings. We're up over $900,000 in interest earnings this year versus last year. So kudos to Sally here. She's really aggressive on making sure if we have money in the bank, it's going in the right direction and making sure we're getting the best interest rate that we can. We also work with Meters investment firms. So we have a lot of money at work right now because of the American Rescue Plan, the stimulus dollars that we have in the bank. We're able to draw interest on that. So that is one of the largest differences between last year and this year.
I say, if my memory serves me correct, that's the most interest we've had in a while, since when interest was crazy.
Absolutely.
Not crazy low, but crazy high.
Absolutely. The admissions tax for this year in 2023, we're up $433,000. Lodging tax, we're up just over $200,000. And the income tax, like we noted earlier, it's about $150,000 that we've seen the increase from 2022 versus 2023. The other area that we've seen an increase is municipal court. So the revenue in municipal court is up about $150,000 this time in 2023 compared to 2022.
So municipal court is caught up, balanced. I think Mr. Murray brought something up once before about the cost, and are we getting a little closer to even?
Yes, their revenue's exceeding their expenditures right now. So if we move on to the expenditures, this chart here shows the top 5 departments and the expenditures out of the general fund. The gray line, like we've talked about it for many meetings now, that is administrative support, which handles our transfers out of the general fund. The large increase is primarily due because of the Cedar Point partnership dollars, and so those agreement dollars started last year and will continue on into the future. So you'll see that large increase on that gray line for those transfer dollars. It's hard to see here, but the blue line is police department and the red line is fire department. They're running neck and neck. At the end of 2023, the fire department was 4.6 million, and the police department was just under 4.5 million. So they're running parallel pretty much, and that's typical. The Muni Court is the yellow line that you see, and they've remained stable. They actually had a position, a full-time position. The employee left this year, and they're not backfilling that position. So their expenses have decreased a little bit this year. And they do not intend to replace that employee next year in the budget either. The green line down there is what we spend for horticulture and the public realm division. That's the forestry, the greenhouse, and the grounds maintenance employees that we have to take care of the city properties. And they've remained pretty consistent. Another way to look at the expenses here is by the different categories. Blue line is going to be the wages and fringe benefits for the employees. At the end of November, we were at $12.2 million. As you can see, going back to 2018, we were at 13.4. So we've done a good job of controlling expenses. We do have less employees now than when we did in 2018. The yellow line is, again, the transfer dollars, as we've discussed previously. The orange line there is the contractual services, and that's seen a slight increase. As everyone has seen, you know, cost of doing business has increased slightly. And the gray line there at the bottom is the supplies and materials, and again, a slight increase there. Here's the total general fund expenditures for the year. For the year, we're at $31 million that we've expended. Just as a reminder, the revenue for the year is at $33 million, so we've done a good job controlling the expenses, and we do have the revenue to cover that because we've seen an increase in expenditures, but we do have the revenue to cover those.
Michelle?
Yep.
Is this public?
Absolutely.
This graph? Do you think it would make sense after the word expenditures to put maybe parentheses transfers, just so people realize that you're not spending all that money within, just a thought, I don't know if it would make it more clear.
On this slide here?
Yeah, just on this slide, just because you talk about transfers prior and then all of a sudden the total, they say, wow, we went from 16 million to 31 million.
This is the total expenditures. It includes transfer
That's what I mean,
dollars.
so if you just put like expenditures / transfers or something, so it reminds the public that this number includes transfers. Just a thought, I don't know, just for clarity.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it could be expenses and investments too.
Or stuff, yeah, just a little more clarity, just because we know it's not all, we understand it's not all expenditures per se, right? Because you're transferring to another department to be used for a different purpose. I mean, just a thought.
Sure. I appreciate it.
And disclosures sometimes mean more than the numbers.
Absolutely. So here we are for the general fund cash balance at the end of November. We're at $7.9 million. As a reminder, you know, we always want to be 15 to 20%. I, of course, like to see at least 20% reserve target balance there of cash available. So as we go into December, we do have 3 payrolls in December, and that's not typical. So we have 3 payrolls here in December. We also have some debt payments, and we have year-end transfers and adjustments at year-end. So we still expect the balance in the general fund to be around the $6 million mark at the end of this year. This last slide here is the number of full-time employees. We have 248 full-time employees at the end of November. This breaks it down. The largest departments for employee count is the police department and fire department. So the police department, They're still trying to get up to full staff of 53 officers. They're still hiring, still recruiting. The fire department is at full staff currently. That is all I had for November financials. Happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
The only question I have, is there anything, because a lot of times we clean things up in December. It looks like we're going into a good year. Is there any bills, expenditures, or whatever in December that are going to?
We do have a debt payment. At the end of November, we did transfer $1 million into our health insurance fund. Health insurance has been a challenge again this year. We've all seen rising costs for health insurance, and I have some more information when we go through the 2024 budget on health insurance for us. Last year, we had over $6 million in claims and expenses in our health insurance, and as a reminder, we are self-funded, so we are paying that at 100%. Previously, we were at $4 million in expenditures out of the health insurance fund. So this year, we're just hitting about $5 million right now, and we still have, here at the end of the year, we got 3.5 more weeks of expenditures that we'll be paying for. We've done some changes with health insurance for 2024. We have moved from the Medical Mutual of Ohio network. We will be Cigna network. Hopefully, we anticipate additional savings using that network. We have also changed our TPA. So we have new people that will be doing our billing, new eyes looking at it. We have implemented different programs on the prescription plans and how those operate, trying to curb some of the high-cost drugs and seeing if there's alternative options and things like that. So it's a battle. It's a constant changing target. We're hoping next year that, our health insurance expenditures are back to $5 million or less, but it has been a concern. Mr. Orzak, City Manager, we still have some different, we have 2 plans for our health insurance, and as we all know, we have unions that negotiate for health insurance. The contracts end in 2024, so next year, when we're going into contract negotiations and looking at health insurance, because that is a big perk for the employees, we'll be taking a hard look at health insurance and what needs to be done. If we can, we don't want to take away too much from the employees, but a give and take there, because we need to make sure that, the fair share across the board is being split, I guess, a little more evenly, and the city doesn't have to absorb all these high cost of health insurance on our own. So lots of changes, lots of discussion will be had next year.
Mr. Chairman, if I may inquire. Ms. Reeder, how should we understand the water fund and sewer fund items? Maybe you just run through what that means for us again. I know you've done this before, and I'm wondering if there's another way to present this so that the public and others looking at this, all of us looking at this, can look at it and in a glance know that this is all as it should be.
Sure, absolutely. So we did make the notation on there to change that earlier this year when looking at the water and sewer funds. The first column is the expended balance, then we have the outstanding encumbrances, and then the ending balance. So it doesn't account for the revenue coming in. So on the water fund, an example of that one is that the Perkins Avenue project. We just received a large grant. We're waiting for those funds to come in. So it's a timing on the cash.
Grant funds come into this, actually into the fund, so.
Correct.
Okay.
They'll be coming in. So we just had an email the other day. It's within the 10 business days that they'll pay us back. So the outstanding encumbrances includes some projects that are grant funded, meaning they're either grant funded or loan funded. So as soon as we have the expenditure, usually typically it's closer to like probably 3 or 4 days when we receive the money. This particular grant was from OD, so it's taken a little bit longer than normal. But we have expenditures there, and as soon as those expenditures hit, it's either a book entry or within 4 days we have the revenue in there. So I agree. It looks, I think, difficult maybe for the public to understand those ending balances. We're not ending with a negative balance in any of those funds.
Do we from time to time have to use the general fund to cover that until the payment is received? Or that's not permitted, correct?
Correct. So the first column is our actual cash balance. So our cash balance is not negative. So the middle column says, okay, this is what we have promised out of that cash. But
Some of that includes debt or bonds that will sell in the future at some point?
We have a,
No.
no.
we have a debt.
So like on the Perkins Avenue project, so we had $1.3 million, I think it was, of water funds that are now grant funded. So we made the expenditure, we're waiting for that revenue to come in. And unfortunately, this one crossed months. Typically, it doesn't cross months because we made the payment late November, and then we're waiting for those funds to come back. So that outstanding encumbrance column is what we have promised, and most of those promises on water and sewer, they're a large project. They're a project that we either have loan funds or grant funds coming back for. On the sewer fund, we have that high-rate treatment project, and that one is a $35 million project. We don't have all of that on purchase orders because obviously the cost is so high, but that project in particular, as soon as we expend the funds, we get reimbursement immediately for the loan that we will be taking out at the end of the project.
So
Does that
you
help?
keep track internally of the loans and the grants that are expected, such that it would be easy to expand this table to show that? Or I don't want to create a lot of additional work. You track it already, it would be good to know it, but if it's not something that you track, then I'm not asking that.
So I could add a column for expected revenue, and that will just add a column there, and then the ending balance, it'll take care of that. So the expected revenue would be the loans and the grants that are coming back in, and that's fairly easy to do. And I think it would help for a lot of clarity in this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are we at the point where we need to look at a rate study again? No, I'm jumping all over the place, but.
We are. The engineering office, Mr. Orzak, we've all been meeting on water and sewer rates. It's coming.
Okay.
It's coming.
And what we have to remember, unfortunately, as we go internally, we're on a cash basis. So it's cash in, cash out, okay? And I understand, Dennis, what you're looking at, but it's almost, you'd have to have a footnote or something to when grants are going to be received. Because this is strictly cash and encumbrances.
Correct. I think adding that a column for expended revenue will help greatly, and that will be the loans and the grants that we have coming and that we're expecting still this year.
Because this is kind of a mixed presentation.
Yes.
This is some cash, some
Yeah, I know. It's
accrual
a-
account.
it's a-
Yeah, it's both.
Does anybody have any more questions on November financials?
Because hopefully the residents of Sandusky see, well, they don't see what's going on underneath the ground, okay? But, well, I do, because I had to get on Columbus Avenue, Perkins Avenue, and when you were ripping everything up, putting in all the new water lines and everything, so hopefully people in Sandusky are seeing what's being done with the streets being paved, and what's being moved forward, because that seems like the last couple of years, people have complained that we were not doing enough for the streets, and there's only so much money, and I think you're doing a good job of identifying the streets. If I happen to live in a street that's next to the one that's getting done and I'm not getting done, not that, we do so many.
Absolutely. I mean, to the credit of, I guess, the administration and also the commission, there's been a lot of projects. I mean, driving down Butler Street, it's a nice road surface now, nice and smooth. Perkins Avenue just got redone. They're working on Warren Street. A lot of streets that have been on the list for a while are getting taken care of. On top of that, we've got a lot of great projects. The Justice Center is getting rehabbed right now. We're in the process of going through the process of building out a rec center, so we're going to be having a lot of transformational projects and buildings that have been rehabbed over the last couple years. A lot of it's obviously due to the American Rescue Plan dollars that were awarded to us, and we're trying to make the best use of all those dollars.
And Butler Street is open, is that what Mr. Waddington told me?
Yep, it's open.
How did you, off the subject, I admit. How'd you get it done that fast?
The contractor that got that bid was doing the bridge repair up for the county over there on Perkins Ave that was closed down, and they got done and deployed, and they went to town quickly and got it done. They were anticipating being done in the spring, but all the stars aligned, and so they knocked it out.
Yes, ahead of time. That's,
And to your point, Chairman, we intend to have some information out to the public after the first of the year at a commission meeting on a lot of the things that you're pointing out, like how many roads have been paved and fixed, how water lines, sewer lines, house beautification grants and things like that, to show the picture of just how much investment that the commission has authorized to
I think that'd be an excellent idea.
get the town in shape.
I don't speak for the commission, I'm only saying that the amount of things that are being done, we're seeing absolute numbers, but we're not seeing projects. So I think that you get yelled at for everything else, Mr. Murray and Mr. Brady. You might as well get something positive. Okay. Do we approve the financials? I can't remember. I didn't think so. Not only, okay. Okay. And then it appears, if I go down far enough, we got a budget presentation. Sure.
So here we are, it's 2024 budget. So as a reminder on the timeline, we had the first draft of the budget out by November 1st. All of the budget material is available on our website. It's been emailed out to you guys. There's obviously a lot more information in the full budget than we will go over today. There's over 1,200 lines of expenditures in the actual budget. So I'm happy to make time to review the budget with anybody at any time. And as you have questions, feel free to stop me as we go through this presentation. The plan is to have this budget to commission at the first meeting in January. January 8th is the first meeting of the new year. We have 3 new commissioners coming on, so we want to make sure that they have ample opportunity to, ask questions and actually have a say in this new budget. So the first time they'll have it for hearing will be January 8th. If everything looks proper and they're in agreement, we can have this for second reading there at the second meeting in January. So as an overview of the budget, as we discussed earlier, the wage increases, the police department, they do receive a 3% wage increase in 2024, where the fire and the ASME group are receiving 2%. And as you guys just agreed upon, the 2% administrative wage increase will go to commission for Monday for them to have final vote on that wage increase. As a note, the police department did have different pay increases this contract compared to the fire and AFSCME, but in the end, it was very similar. So over the 3-year contract for the police department, they were at 2% the first year, 2.5%, and then 3%, where fire and AFSCME and the administrative employees, we were at 2%, 3%, and 2%. So still in alignment, just in a little bit different order. As a reminder, we will see an increase in the police force because of the new agreement where we will police at Cedar Point, which started this year. So you'll see the expenditures have increased, and that is for the 5 additional officers that are budgeted to fill those positions and do the police forcing.
Do they compensate us for those officers?
Absolutely. We are compensated for those officers. And the increase to fire and EMS services with that fact-finding report we had in 2022, we had to increase the fire department by 3 employees. So you'll see expenditures have increased, and that is due to additional employees in the department. Health insurance, we touched on this briefly with the November financials. For 2024, we have a 10% increase in the budget for health insurance. This is on top of the 22% increase that we had last year. The expenditures in 2021 were just around $4 million, and it was under $4 million for many years prior to 2021. 2022, we were just over $6 million, and where we sat at the end of November was $4.9 million. We've had another week since the end of November, and we've paid expenditures. We've hit over $5 million of expenditures on health insurance this year. So again, that'll be something that we look at next year harder when we have union negotiations and have further discussions about that. The Parks and Public Realm accounts, so this was the new account that was created in 2023, so that's the first year you'll see these account numbers show up in the budget. Parks and Public Realm is the grounds division, the greenhouse, and the public realm division. The horticulture division used to be part of that, but now we split horticulture out and they are just the forestry division. So these account numbers, the 110-4850 and the 110-3300, you'll see the expenditures kind of fluctuate, but if you combine them, they're still in line of where they used to be. The American Rescue the American Rescue Plan funds, also known as our stimulus funds, we have about an $8.5 million balance in that fund. I have an additional slide just to kind of touch on that, of where we have spent those funds and where we expect to spend those funds in the future. As stated at the Finance Committee meeting in February, we plan to bring back the capital plan, so you guys will have a look at the capital plan before that goes to commission. And then, as always, my revenue figures are going to be conservative, and Mr. Orzak is on board with that. Want to make sure we have the funds, in our hand before we make any moves on the expenditure side. Here's a look at the general fund revenue for 2024. This is only the general fund. We're estimating next year of $30.8 million, almost $30.9, I guess, million dollars in revenue in the general fund. If you look back, obviously, 2014, before we had Issue 8 in place, our revenue in the general fund was just over $16 million. So we're almost to the point where we've doubled our revenue, which is amazing. So kudos to the administration and the commission along the way, making changes, and we've been able to increase revenue. So you'll see that $30.8 million figure broken down here on the revenue slide for the general fund next year. Here's where we actually get the $30.8 million. 42% of it, there in green, is the income tax dollars. It's almost $13 million that we expect to see in income tax funds next year. The blue, the light blue, I guess, is our admissions tax. About 29% of our budget is funded from admissions tax in the general fund. So 29% of the budget there is from admissions tax. Moving there to the yellow, that departmental revenue, we're almost hitting $3 million. That goes back to Al's point, this is departmental revenue. The largest department that we see revenue coming back in is the police department, and that's mostly because of the Cedar Point contract and any bill back items that they have for police officers running, security at the games for the school, also resource officers, and like at the library.
For accounting purposes, obviously we expend the money, and then I assume we get something back from Cedar Point? Do you net them as an expense?
We have an agreement with Cedar Point. They pay a flat amount. So it doesn't, even if we didn't have a position filled for that officer, they're still paying for 5 officers to be at the park.
But you gross up both sides of the revenue and expense. It's not a net number.
Okay. Thank you.
And then some of the other police duties that they bill for, we are just billing back for the actual time. The dark green there is our property taxes. Property taxes only make up about 6% of our budget. We've had discussions before, the majority share of everyone's property taxes does not come to the city. That large portion goes to the schools. So it only makes up 6% of our general fund budget. It's about $1.7, $1.8 million there. The next piece of the pie here is lodging tax. Our lodging tax, almost $1.9 million we expect next year. It's 6% of the budget. Local government and state government funds that we get, whether they're dispersed directly from the state or from the county, is estimated to be $871,000 next year. Interest earnings, we have at $575,000 next year. I would like to exceed that, but a lot of that deals with timing. We are going to be spending down some of the ARPA funds that we have next year. So that, as everything, is going to be on the conservative side. If we, exceed the estimate that we have for interest earnings, we're always thrilled with that. And then we have miscellaneous and parking tax. Parking tax next year, we are estimating $425,000 of the general fund budget to be coming from parking tax, only about 1% of the general fund budget. All right, if we want to move on here to the expenditures for the entire budget. So this slide here shows all the funds that we have that we need to budget for. There's 35 funds that we have to budget for. And like I said before, there's much more detail in the actual budget. There's over 1,200 lines for each, one of these combined, I guess, in the actual presentation of the budget. The first fund we have here is the general fund. This, of course, is where our police, fire, municipal court, building division, finance department, a majority of our departments operate from the general fund. Across the board here, you'll see we were at $19 million budgeted in 2021. In 2024, in the far right column, we're now budgeting $30.7 million for next year. I do have another slide that'll show the breakdown on where those dollars are going by department. I don't really want to touch on every fund, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. A lot of these are real similar, 2023 to 2024 budget. You'll see in the fund number 240 is the coronavirus relief fund. So those are our stimulus funds, the American Rescue Plan funds. We have budgeted to spend most of the cash balance. I don't think that will happen. We do have until 2026 to expend the funds. We just need to have them promised by the end of the year. And we will have a lot of this in the capital plan in February when we have that presented to you guys. The other funds on here, the very last one there at the bottom is it's a new fund, so you'll see that we didn't have any funds in there. It's the One Ohio Opioid Settlement Fund. We'll be working through that. That's legislative on where those funds can be spent. It's for drug remediation, and there's some rules and regulations on that we'll be working through. Here's the other second half of all the funds that we have. At the top there is our capital fund and our capital improvement project funds. So those things kind of run hand in hand of all the large projects that we have. Again, in February, we'll have the full capital plan as we, the engineering department, Aaron Klein's working through all the projects and what's going to take priority for next year. And we'll have a further breakdown of those. A large difference that you're going to see is in Fund 613, which is our sewer fund. The difference there is that ongoing high-rate treatment project. So we'll have the additional expenditure, but we'll also have the additional revenue coming in because that is one of the projects. As soon as we make the expenditures, we do a book entry and we'll have the revenue for that. All in, looking at all the different funds totaled, we're at $115,000. I'm sorry, $115 million for the year in 2024. In 2023, we are only about $90 million. Again, the big differences are going to be the sewer fund and the American Rescue Plans that we expect to expend in 2024.
You mentioned capital expenditures. We approve the operating budget and the capital budget at different times. Correct.
Yes, and so what we bring back in February is more or less the capital plan. And then we haven't ever officially done a full capital budget where we say, yes, go ahead and add all these projects to the budget, because every project over $10,000 comes back in front of the commission. And once they approve it officially, then I do a budget amendment to make sure that project's added for the current year. This slide here is the breakdown of the expenditures for the general fund and the dollars in the general fund on where they're going. Police department and your fire department are going to be the largest expenditures there as far as a department. 18% for the police department and 19% for the fire department is what's budgeted for next year. If you go all the way down to the bottom, administrative support is the other large spender. Again, those are the transfers. So I keep using the word expenditure, but those are mostly the transfers. That's 36% of the budget next year, just over $11 million. The total budget for the general fund in 2024 is $30.7 million, and at this time last year, when we did the initial budget for 2023, we were at $29.3 million. Slight increase, but pretty similar to what we saw last year. Here's a breakdown of employees. 2024 is in the far right column. We're at 253 employees that are budgeted next year. We did have 257 employees budgeted this year, so a slight decrease. There's been a couple employees that have moved around, like the city manager. He has not filled an assistant city manager position, but we did have an employee that moved out of the HR division up to the city manager's office, so there's been some switches and some moving employees. And as we discussed, the municipal court had a full-time employee that they're also not replacing. So we are down to 253 employees that are budgeted next year. That is actually the same number that we had in 2020 prior to COVID, was exactly 253. But we had some changes along the way. We have the 3 additional firefighters that are now in their department, and then we have the 5 officers in police department. So leaving those 8 positions out, we're down 8 positions from where we were prior to COVID, for reference.
So do we have the officers and the firemen that we need? Are we pretty well staffed? I know that everybody's looking for something.
The fire department's full staffed at their staffing level, and the police department is still down. They're given a new test for new hires coming up here. Just a challenging time to fill positions for police all over the country, and but our strength was 48 originally, and with the 5 we're at 50 right now, so we're over what we had been in historically, but they're just using officers for Cedar Point. We have to have 2 officers at Cedar Point during all of their operating hours per the contract. We hope to get to full staff by summer next year, but it all depends.
Budget for full staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
This slide here is going to show the breakdown of the transfers that are coming out of the general fund. So there's a couple reasons that we have to do transfers to another fund. It could be to subsidize the other fund. We also have the issue 8 commitments, and then the new Cedar Point partnership. So there's some emissions tax and parking tax dollars that have been promised to other areas. So the blue indicates the amount we transferred in 2023. The gray line indicates what we have in the 2024 budget. The first comparison there is for the transit department. So we had originally budgeted $500,000 for transit, and next year we increased that to $750,000. That's more realistic, I guess. This year for transit, we've exceeded $900,000 that we've transferred to them. They're going through studies. They're trying to make sure they offer the best service they can at the most affordable price. So they're working on transit, and at this time we have $750,000 budgeted to make ends meet in transit next year. Transit will make a switch in the middle of next year. On July 1st, they will be going to an urban system instead of a rural system. So I probably should have noted that when we looked at funds. So going to an urban system July 1st means that they will now have portions of their budget funded from the federal government, so it'll be a federal grant instead of the state grant. The splits will still be the same. It's just a matter of who's funding the dollars. So we don't expect to get any additional dollars, but it's going to be a change that you'll see more transit expenses in the federal grants line instead of the transit actual fund. Next, there is Park and Rec. This year we had budgeted $350,000 for them to make ends meet. Next year we're down to $275,000. That's flexible, depends on, what we have going on with that new rec center, design and preliminary plans for that rec center next year, but it's budgeted that they will need $275,000 next year. The next column there is the public art. Public art is set by ordinance. Public art gets 1% of the admissions tax dollars for the previous year. So what we see in admissions tax dollars this year, 1% needs to go to the public art program. So I'll make that transfer in January of next year. And it's estimated to be about $105,000. Programming, that is also set by ordinance. Programming fund gets 10% of lodging tax. So at this point, it's expected to be about $205,000 that we make that transfer in January of 2024 for programming. Housing is staying the same at $400,000. Economic development grants remains the same at $500,000. The Issue 8 projects staying at $1.5 million. That will go towards streets. It goes to the parks. It also goes to facilities, vehicles, planning department as needed. There's always, as you guys know, the separate report on where all of those dollars are being spent. That report goes out 4 times a year. The large column here is our admissions and parking tax. So this is $4.5 million that we expect to see from the increased rate in the admissions tax, going up to 8% in 2022. Those funds have been promised into different buckets, so you'll see those transfers come out of the general fund into the appropriate fund. And fire pension, police pension, that is exactly what it sounds like. Our fire and our police department, they have separate pension systems, and we have separate funds for each one of those. And we only have levy dollars going into there, so anything above what the levy brings in, the city has to make the fund whole for the difference. There is talks and legislation of increasing the police department. The pension contribution currently is 19.5% that the city pays for a police officer, and we pay 24% for the fire department employees. So there's legislation in the works now to increase that, so the police department's pension could be 24% to match what the firefighters have.
Now, that would have to come from the state legislation?
Absolutely. Yep.
Not the money, though.
Would be about $170,000 change for us if we had to increase their pension
one I
to
assume.
24%. The last column here, that's Al's favorite, payroll stabilization. At this point, I know of one official retirement for next year, but we do have things that pop up, or when employees leave or retire, the funds come out of the payroll stabilization to pay for those employees. So at the moment.
And, my question that I'll ask you every year, what do we have in that fund now?
Right now, at the end of November, $426,535.
Do you and Mr. Orzak plan on at the end of the year bringing that up? Because there was a percentage, and I'm having my senior moment. I can't remember what that percentage was that we decided. Dan, can you help me? You were,
I remember.
So my recollection was we want to make sure we keep it at least $400,000. We do have, when we have another 27th pay, which I believe is in 2031.
That's my question.
2031, we'll have that additional pay. And one payroll right now for the city is hitting almost $600,000. So if we'd like to, start contributing additional dollars to payroll stabilization to have that to cover that pay in 2031, or additional retirements, or employees that are leaving the city, we would have those funds available. It's the retirements where we have larger payouts than just an employee that decides to leave. So we never know with retirements. I can run all the charts in the world until somebody decides they want to leave. I could budget for everybody that's over a certain age or after a certain years of service. It's really hard, to look at the employee to know what they had as prior service credit, if they're an OPERS employee or a police and fire employee. So I'd rather, that we do have the funds available in payroll stabilization. So as needed, we have the funds there when needed. There's been changes before in pension systems out of our control. Like when OPERS changed the pension system for health insurance, we saw people exiting that we didn't think were going to exit. So if anything changes out of our control, we could see people exiting, and it's not a reflection of, unhappy employees at the city. But it's definitely nice and very appreciative to have that fund. So makes a big difference. Here's the slide on historical general fund expenses and cash balance. The gray bar represents what we have in actual historical expenditures, and then the last column there is what we have in the 2024 budget. Again, we have the revenue to cover it. We're at budgeting $30.7 million for estimated expenditures in the general fund next year. That blue line at the bottom indicates cash balance and where we've been and where we expect to be. In 2024, like we said previously, prior to issue 8, we had $4 million in the bank. So we've increased that, and we want to keep that relative to what we have budgeted for expenditures. Again, I'd like to see 20%, so that cash balance is budgeted to be at least $6.1 million in the general fund at the end of 2024. Last slide here is on the American Rescue Plan funds, the ARPA dollars. As a reminder, we received $18 million, a little over $18 million in revenue from the American Rescue Plan. Expenses through the end of November are $9.5 million. So that gives us about $8.5 million to still spend on future projects. In that first box on the left, you'll see projects that were legislated and approved. We have the Justice Center design. We used ARPA funding for that. We've been using street resurfacing dollars every year. It's averaged about $1 million each year for street resurfacing. Since we had those dollars in 2021, we still plan on doing additional street resurfacing next year with ARPA dollars. We had just recently an affordable housing project that was approved. We're working on the Osborne School project, and that $750,000 of ARPA funds will go towards that project with certain parameters when they meet them. Butler Street, as we all talked about earlier, that was ARPA funded. Portions of Warren Street has been funded through ARPA. We have Sproul Park that they're working on with ARPA funds. We've had vehicles, equipment, and facilities that we've been able to improve due to ARPA funds, and we were able to help the library with their restoration, and we were able to give them $250,000 for their project that they had. Future projects, again, everything that we have going on, anything over $10,000 will go back to commission for approval. But on our list for future projects, currently we have street resurfacing for 2024. We have the All Wheels, also known as the skate park. There's about $1 million that was designated out of ARPA dollars to go towards that skate park. Still in the process of finalizing that one, but that should happen soon. We do have payroll coming out of future projects. So in the 2024 budget, it's about $470,000 that are employees that we have that are ARPA funded, that we have in the budget. So these are employees, when COVID happened, we were allowed to bring back employees that were let go during COVID, during the pandemic. So we currently have 5 employees that will be on the payroll and funded through ARPA dollars in 2024. And I know this is the last year. So in 2025, we will make the adjustments and we'll be able to fund those employees. It's not that they're going to need to go away. It's not that we can't afford them. We didn't overextend ourselves, but the dollars are there, and we do have 5 employees that are still being funded through ARPA through the end of next year. We have tennis courts as a future project. That's something we've been working on for a while. We expect to have that, whether that runs with the rec center or a separate project, just to get that one out the door. We'll have that one going here probably in the spring of 2024. Pathway, that's been on the list. It's ongoing. As they do street improvements, you'll see pathway sections that get done along the street. So those projects will continue. And then we also have the largest project left for ARPA is our South Side plan. So the area of MacArthur Park, working through that, and that's going to be a large project that we plan to use the ARPA funds. I think that is it, guys. It's a lot of information. So like I said, I'm happy to answer questions now. I'm happy to meet with anybody as we go through it.
I want to thank you for the thorough job your staff, and all the department heads, I think all collaborate to put this together, and this is a lot of work. So
I like it. It's a lot of work, but I do like it in the end.
Thank you to all of the department heads, to your staff, because It sounds like everybody was working in sync and getting you the information. I mean, you only had to threaten 2 or 3 people, right?
A day.
More than that.
Hey, you're still allowed to carry a gun, so be careful.
I would just like to say, Mr. Chairman, if I could, Michelle's kind of humble, but her and Sally work tirelessly and absent being in the room daily or hourly with her, banging her head against the wall. But she is doing a phenomenal job, and her and Sally are in sync, working with each other, and they put a lot of time and effort in this, so we appreciate all of their work.
I think I do two things. Do we make a motion to send this with our approval to the commission? Now, before I ask for that motion, is there any questions with the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're seeing the income tax sort of flatten out. Receipts are actually projected to be down from this year. That's a little bit of a concern longer term. I'm wondering, since that's our largest source of revenue, wondering if you have some thoughts as to what accounts for that. And then related to that, but not something to take up today, because I didn't ask you about this before today, we had that study that was done by the National Resource Network a couple of years ago. And I'm wondering if in 2024 it wouldn't make sense to take a look at that study and see where we are relative to the shortfalls that it was projecting in the future and what we might want to think about. I'm not suggesting that we should necessarily do anything at this point in time, but I think it might be a helpful exercise to cycle through that. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Sure, absolutely. We can always take a look at that. I remember that resource network, a lot of that was dealing with employees and the employee counts that we had. And if we continued on that path, there was areas of concern. I think we've done a great job at curbing that. As we talked about, the 5 new police officers that came on board are funded. So we've had some great opportunities. The 3 firefighters that we brought on board, the intention hopefully is that the amount of overtime that they need will be reduced. So there's some give and take on all of that, but absolutely, we can look at that report again and see if there's anything else that's still usable, or kind of look at that report with new eyes and see where we're at, and where we predict to be in the future.
So why do we think the income tax is flattening out?
That's more or less, I'm going to be conservative on income tax. So it's the withholding dollars that have been up. So we have a lot of different things going on with work from home, which is concerning. We also have the penalties and interest is declining on what we can charge as a maximum penalty, which I don't think that's going to affect it greatly. We have different businesses that have been laying off, of like say Ventra, where they've been shut down. There's just, it's a conservative number. Hopefully we exceed that, but I want to make sure that we're on the safe side of all of that for changes. That work from home, Rita, who handles our income tax, they track it and they can give you they'll give us a report of how many people we've had in our city, and they're really good about, okay, if the employee, typically worked in Sandusky and now they're working from home, they can give us the number of employees that have been working from home and what those refunds are.
Does Rita, on behalf of Mr. Murray's question, does Rita have any type of studies as to, why we're going flat? Is it?
So it's withholding dollars, and this is where it's hard, because there are people at the end of this year that could submit for refunds in 2024 when they go to do their taxes, because now they've worked from home in 2023. So until we go through a full cycle of that, I kind of want to just be conservative and see where we lie with that. Hopefully we exceed all the numbers on revenue. Like I said, I really think that we'll exceed the number in interest earnings for next year. Income tax, I'm hoping that we're above that also.
Anybody else in the?
One question. So in the budget, after going through this myself, right, everyone's got a wish list. Are there Are there items that departments came to you guys with that, boy, it'd be really great if we could put this in there that you have on the list that should the revenue exceed and we have a little bit of extra funding? Are there things that, I would say that they would really like to get done?
So in this budget, I think we only had one department that asked for an additional employee. Most of the items that are larger dollars will show up in the capital plan. So that capital plan is really the running list. And what happens with that one, if the funding's not here for 2024, it gets pushed to 2025, kind of by a priority basis. But there will be, of course, things that pop up next year that, were unexpected, whether something breaks at one of the water plants or the sewer plants. We always have something that pops up that wasn't expected. I think we had to do a muffin top. That was the funniest name, but a muffin top at the sewer plant, and it was $500,000. It's crazy what things cost and what you're paying for things, I guess, and what they actually do. Lots of money, but I don't think we'll be sitting on a huge surplus at the end of the year.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion to present this or send it to the commission for their approval. I guess that's what you do, okay? So can I have that motion?
I'll move that we recommend the 2024 budget as presented today to the city commission.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do we want to do roll call? Make it official?
Yeah.
Mr. Thomascula?
Yes.
Mr. Monter?
Yes.
Mr. Rusalt?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols? Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Orzak?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And again, please,
Yeah, great job.
Excellent work.
again, the praise is up for the department because being on 3 different large organizations with the budget process, it's not easy. And I have always said that you just need a dartboard and you throw the dart, it could probably be as accurate on some things. Okay, so, with that, public, anybody from the public, did you get any questions or? Any? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So,
Happy holidays, everyone.
yeah, I say, Merry Christmas. Okay, I'm old.
Yes.
I still say Merry Christmas.
I don't think anybody